So Swami Vivekananda gives a linguistic point. And he says that in forming the sound Om, we have to generate every position of the tongue that configures language. He puts it in this way. He says the first letter A is the root sound, the key, pronounced without touching any part of the tongue or palate. And then at the other end of the spectrum is where we bring the lips together. It represents the last sound in the series being produced by the closed lips. And the rolls from the very root to the end of the sounding board of the mouth. And so he says that Om represents the whole phenomena of sound producing. As such, it must be the natural symbol, the matrix of all the various sounds. It denotes the whole range and possibility of all the words that can be made. That is why it is a universal sound symbol. It is not that we are saying with dogmatism, please repeat that as the only possible sound for this supreme entity that English denotes as God and other languages call different various names, illustrating all kinds of qualities. Actually, Om embraces all of them, not only as a linguistic sound, as a linguistic expression of a totality of linguistic expression, but it is also representative. If we study clearly this Mandukya Upanishad, all the three states of consciousness, and meditate on these things, all the various religions, or the religious ideas of the Vedas, not only that, but not to mention Jainism, Sikhism, Buddhism, they've all gathered themselves around this word, Om. What has that to do with Japan, America, England, Ireland, or any other country? He says simply this, that the word has been retained at every stage of religious growth in India. Why should we pay any special attention to India? Why should we study these principles of Vedanta? It is because this is the substratum, the ocean, as it were, of all religious expressions. And it is India's speciality. Now, Swami Vivekananda had this idea that every country has its personality or speciality. And of course, we can see that. We can see the various key characteristics in every country. It just happens that if you make a route for the origin of civilization as ancient Greece and ancient India, then ancient Greece is concerned with the material world, the art, the aesthetics, the culture of that kind, whereas India is intrinsically to do with these deeper questions. And the two together, of course, presents us with a harmony of existence. Both have to be there. And Om represents the whole spectrum of it. So it has been manipulated to mean all the various ideas about God. Says Swami Vivekananda, monists, dualists, non-dualists, separatists, monodualists, separatists, and even atheists took up this Om. Om has become the one symbol for the religious aspiration of the vast majority of human beings. And take, for example, he says, the English word God, it covers only a limited function. As I say, even despite its etymology, going back to the Sanskrit, the one worthy of being worshipped, it conjures up for different people different concepts. An extra cosmic creator God comes to mind. The childhood image of an old man in the sky with a beard. Some kind of precursor of Zeus, or representing Judaistic version of that, or Jupiter, or some entity of this nature. It comes through in the Abrahamic side of things. And ultimately, when you combine that with the Greco-Roman world, it comes out as something like a creator God. We can see it in the Sistine Chapel, the beautiful image of that elderly man, a father figure, stretching his hand out to Adam. So, personal or impersonal, says Swami Vivekananda, or absolute God. So with the words of God in every other language, they are signifying, or signification is very small. And this word Om, he says, however, has around it all the various significance. As such, it should be accepted by everyone. So there are good grounds for us making this universal. But then, when he comes to this tad japaha tad artha bhavanam, the repetition of this Om and meditating on its meaning is the way. Why should there be repetition? Now we must remind ourselves, of course, of this great formula, this great recipe for householders, fourfold recipe that Sri Ramakrishna gives. He tells us that we should always sing the glories, always be in a state of rapture about the glories all around us, wherever we look, of God. Secondly, japa, repetition of a sacred sound symbol, keeping the mind ever firm and ever attuned to the glory of God, lovingly repeating his name as we would repeat any other beloved's name. Japa. Thirdly, keeping holy company. When we repeat this name, we are keeping holy company. We are displacing any of these other temptations and doubts and fears. It's like a glass of fluid or water with mud in it, displacing the mud by putting fresh water in until the displacement of all the mud takes place. Saturating the mind with divine presence. Not worrying, how will we resist evil? Resist ye not evil, says Jesus. How will we do that? By saturating the mind with this divine presence. And so saturating the mind, at least with the sound symbol Om, and most mantras will begin with it, will be really what is being meant. Not only repeating this, but repeating it with a great understanding. So why should there be repetition, asks Swami Vivekananda. We've not forgotten the theory of samskaras. That is, we're trying to reform the habit level of the mind. A question before we began the session was, how can we deal with all the temptations of the mind and all the various vagaries and doubts and fears and all the things which come into the category of negativity in the mind? How can we fill our minds with positive God? How can we tune our attention in to this absolute? We can't do it by attacking the unconscious mind directly. The habit level is the habit level. But we can reform our habit. We can change these unconscious impressions by forming a new habit. And the only way to form a habit is repetition. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Practice, practice, practice. In spiritual life, we make a little fun, you see. What is the primary thing we should do? Number one, practice. What is the second thing we should do? Practice. What is the third thing we should do? Practice. Three principles: practice, practice, practice. Repetition, repetition, repetition. You know yourself how you managed to do this. When you didn't know how to do something, and now it's become an automatic action, such as walking, such as driving a car. A baby tottering doesn't know how to walk, has an inclination of it. And then it starts off in small progressions. It learns eventually to turn on its back, or turn from its back to its stomach, and from its stomach to a kind of crouching position. Crouching position, a kind of getting used to the idea of sitting on your heels. And then the idea of, a discovery. With a will to mobilize themselves, they move one foot forward or one knee forward, the corresponding arm, opposite arm forward, until they're crawling all over the place. And the great urge for investigation takes hold of them. And this crawling is necessary in the human development, not only social development, but also the development of the brain, what they call cross-crawl. Then the discovery is I can sit. And then the discovery is I can actually support myself. I can lift myself up by the use of a table. And I can experience standing for the first time. I'm constructed in this way to be able to do it. And it won't be long before I go from table to table. And then a few steps and fall, and more steps, and then walking becomes running. What a delightful process. And what a delightful experience for the parent also to see this progression taking place. So we are in the same position. We develop a habit. Now that same child walks and runs with ease without even thinking about it. So it is to saturate the mind with repetitive action, the whole of the reformation of the unconscious mind, full of these unconscious impressions, samskaras, is just through repetition. Repetition, therefore, is what Patanjali says. So, just to review, samskaras, they're the sum total of impressions that live in the mind. They become more and more latent but remain there. And as soon as they get the right stimulus, says Vivekananda, they come out. Molecular vibration never ceases. When this universe is destroyed, all the massive vibrations disappear. The sun, moon, stars, and earth melt down, but the vibrations remain in the atoms. What a beautiful analysis. What a beautiful understanding of modern science and physics, as it is today even. Each atom performs the same function as the big worlds do. I think sometimes we forget this. I think sometimes we forget that what happens on the very, very tiny level happens on the grand level. There is no diversity in this. That is, there is no disparity. There is no disconnection between the micro and the macro worlds. It only seems like that. And soon when we try to unite these two formulas, these two approaches, this world of the quantum and this world of the general relativity, we'll see it's not a question of uniting them. They're already united. It's a question of seeing how we don't see the fundamental aspect of this. That becomes a discovery. It's all in the observation of it. I think that's what we will come to a conclusion about. So even when the vibrations of the chitta, that is, these vibrations in the mind stuff, this accumulated material, localized seemingly, when they subside, its molecular vibrations go on. And when they get the impulse, they come out again. So we can now understand what is meant by repetition. It's repetition of a wave in the lake, if you will, if you want to use that imagery, of chitta, mind stuff. Now it is the greatest stimulus that can be given to the spiritual samskaras. One moment of company with the holy makes a ship cross the ocean of life. See, that third recommendation, keep holy company. Keep the company of this holy vibration and keep the company of those who are living out this vibration. Coincidentally, I have to mention the fourth as well, because I said four. That is from time to time, going into solitude, giving the mind an opportunity to be stable, to be calm, to be quiet, to be silent. So, such is the power of association. And so he says, this repetition of Om and thinking of its meaning is keeping good company in your own mind. Study and then meditate on what you have studied. I hear so often in modern times, repetition of a mantra such as Om. Om is the mantra of mantras, but there are other bija mantras, that is, sounds which represent to the human understanding what is subtly experienced by the yogic mystic. These sounds can be heard, just as the Om can be heard, experienced as a rising sound, a rising audio vibration inwardly. So, to repeat this sound without understanding its meaning, Patanjali seems to oppose, and for good reason. Thus, light will come to you, the self will become manifest. But one must think of Om and of its meaning. He repeats it. Avoid evil company because the scars of old wounds are in you. What we call these various aberrations in the unconscious mind and the habit level, these are really wounds, and they come from original wounds, psychological scars deep within the psyche. Modern psychology knows and acknowledges this. And evil company is just the thing that is necessary to call them out. And so we have a profile. Now, the other day we were referring to the Vivekachudamani, and shortly next week we'll be celebrating Adi Shankaracharya's birthday. He mentions there in his Vivekachudamani something that is a repetition of a beautiful, beautiful psychological profile mentioned by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. All our problem starts with allowing the senses to move toward their objects indiscriminately, not controlling what we see, what we hear, not being discerning about it. It's a bit like an alcoholic, somebody who has an addiction to drink, saying, I will be fine if I walk into a pub or a place where they serve alcoholic drink. I shall be fine because I know the dangers of alcohol. But soon the eye catches it. Soon the mouth salivates for it. Soon the old memories to do with it come out. And before long, the person is there saying, only one drink. And one drink becomes 2 and 3 and 4. And the next day, they're knocked unconscious. This is the same thing. You cannot recommend to an alcoholic, look, here's your remedy. Please go into the danger area, into the danger zone. So we have to be careful not to go into the danger zone. Step 1. Now we're safe from the external reminder or stimulus. Now what is the next thing? The next thing, we have to direct our attention to something better. We have to keep a better company. Having rejected the old dangerous company, we now decide we're going to keep better company, holy company. So in the same way, says Swami Vivekananda, we are told that good company will call out the good impressions that are in us, but which have become latent. There is nothing holier in the world than to keep good company. And good company, every component of it that brings out these good memories. And so earlier we did a meditation around bringing out the most beautiful scene that you experienced, that gave you great joy. And we have so many inward photographic memories of these beautiful, inspiring scenes, and they can be derived from pilgrimages. See, the benefit of going on pilgrimages is we get an unconscious photo album, as it were. Now, the difference between a photo album and a memory is a photo can stimulate the memory of the actual place. But inwardly, we have enough creativity to recreate the sights, the sounds, the smells, the touches, the tastes, the conversations, the feelings that it evoked. And we have the capacity to evoke anything we want. We can highlight from our library, inexhaustible library of impressions, whatever we like, and form a glorious picture in glorious technicolor. And when we look at it and find out why was it joyful, our mind will lead us back to God that made it so. Now, this can be done with every single observation. We just have to get into the habit of doing it. And habits are formed by repetition. So there's nothing holier in the world than to keep good company, either by evoking memories of pilgrimages or this repetition of a mantra and meditating on its meaning or understanding its meaning, and literally keeping holy company, going to holy places, meeting holy people, going into holy temples and shrines and churches and mosques. Because the good impressions, he says, will then tend to come to the surface. And from that is gained the knowledge of introspection and the destruction of all our obstacles. Tataha pratyak chetana digamaha api antarya ambivahacha. From that is gained the knowledge of introspection and the destruction of obstacles. What is spiritual life? Removal of obstacles. Now the commentary goes, the first manifestation of the repetition and thinking of Om is that the introspective power will manifest more and more, and all the mental and physical obstacles will begin to vanish. What are the obstacles for the yogi? Well, many are mentioned. Starting off from physical obstacles, disease, then mental laziness, and so on. All of these are mentioned in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Now, what has this to do with our question 5? What do we gain by meditating on this Om? We've already seen what we'll gain. But let us go a little further. See, if the one meditates on one element, let us say the A portion, then enlightenment, even by that, comes quickly to the earth after death, gets reborn, in other words. Don't forget, whatever you meditate comes to you. If you want a repetition of the waking conscious state represented by that's what will happen. There, endowed with austerity, chastity, and faith, he experiences greatness in every way. But of course, the ultimate greatness will be one's own freedom, and along with that, the spontaneous welfare of all beings. Ata yadi dvi matrina. Then if he meditates on this as of two elements, that is, two aspects of this Om, O, then he attains the mind, is led by the yajas, the formulas. That is, led by the intermediate space. Don't forget, this Bhu, Bhuva, Swaha is also representative of these three aspects, of the earth, the waking consciousness, the intermediate space, Bhuha, that is the dream aspect, the dream level, and then that which is beyond, Swaha, represented by the dreamless area, and that is now close where that cosmic mind results. It can be the most wonderful platform for creativity that we have, that area of potential before everything else is expressed. And so that intermediate world, or that intermediate space, symbolically termed the world of the moon, having experienced greatness there, he returns again. But all of it is about return. But if he meditates on the highest person with the three elements of the symbol Om, he becomes one with the light, symbolized by the sun, because all along this symbolic relationship with the sun and the moon has been laid out in the Prasna Upanishad. Even as a snake is freed from its skin, even so he is freed from sins. He is led by Sama, the chants, to the world of Brahma, that is the world of this primordial entity, the personal God. He sees the person that dwells in the body who is higher than the highest life. And as to this, two verses are there. And so this is the world of Brahma, is the world of the golden womb, from which everything else comes, Hiranyagarbha, the Lord of Satyaloka, otherwise described in the Prasna Upanishad as Prajapati, Lord of all creatures. For he is the internal self of all living beings in the subtle form, and in him, the subtle self, are all the jivas strung together, as we are told in the Bhagavad Gita. All these worlds are strung on me like pearls on a string. And so the knower of the three elements, all combined as Om, sees the Supreme beyond this Hiranyagarbha, automatically sees that, goes automatically to that, and goes to the world of what we call Saguna Brahman. He obtains freedom and is not forced to return to the mundane life. He sees the Supreme, that Ishvara, who is beyond the world's soul. This Ishvara, same Ishvara mentioned in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, whose manifesting word is Om. And that vision qualifies him for moksha, freedom, liberation. Now, the three elements, each leading to death by itself, if they are united to each other without being separated and employed in actions well performed, external, internal, or intermediate, the knower does not waver. That is, if a man meditates on the three elements separately, it's an emblem of mortality. But if he meditates on this combined, understanding the meaning, and sees it from the area of freedom, that is the fourth state, as it were, that is Turiya, then what happens? So we're told, with the Rig verses, one attains this world, with the yajas, that is, with understanding the aspect, with the yajas, the formulas, one attains the interspace, and the saman, the chants, one attains to that which the seers recognize, so that the wise, one attains even by the mere sound, Om, as support, and which is tranquil, unaging, immortal, fearless, and supreme. That is the supreme status beyond all the three worlds. This is called the fourth state in the Mandukya Upanishad, called Turiya. And though it underlines the other three states, it also, of course, transcends them. All the others go away when only that remains. Now then, the other thing that I wanted to cover, but we covered briefly last week, is one thing which is outstanding in this, and that is that the whole universe is just, according to a wonderful axiom of this macrocosmic escalation or extrapolation from what we see in a small localized way, we then have to say that it is the whole universe which can be divided in this way, just as the individual person is divided, and just as internally to us there is this immortal entity, so too in the universe. And so that the final verse will tell us, in whom the parts are well established as spokes in the center of the wheel. Know him as that person to be known, and to that death may not afflict you. And again, I have to point out that all of this material is wonderful material for meditation too. So that the final conclusion really comes in this Prasna Upanishad. To them then, all those who questioned Pipalada, the teacher, only thus far do I know of that Supreme Brahman, because I've been talking about the source, I've been talking about life, I've been talking about Om, I've been talking about the cosmic person, but when it comes to the Supreme Brahman, then words and concepts will fail. There is nothing higher than that, he maintains. There is Param Asti Iti. And then they praised him, of course, because everything was now exposed. And the teacher obviously has this direct understanding. And so they complete it with their salutations, because it is the teacher that also guides us in all these affairs. There is no point in asking a question to somebody who hasn't got the answers. And the answers are not coming from a textbook. The answers are coming from inner realization, as all our answers must be from direct perception. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.